Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dwarven Tavern. I am Dr. Jeff Collins, your host, and I extend my sincere apologies for being remiss for so long in doing reviews and putting up new videos. We moved the tavern around, even though you can't tell it from this angle. Everything has been moved roughly 180 degrees. I moved all the bookshelves and everything. So, and my desk, which is it's about a 400-pound desk. So it has been kind of a remodel, and but today, I would like to extend my word as a gentleman that it will not be so long again before another review is up, because I've got a huge stack of books. Gen Con starts today, which I decided to forego going to Gen Con for the sake of trying to get caught up on our reviews. Although we will go there toward the end of the week, probably Saturday and Sunday, maybe just Sunday, I don't know. But that is neither here nor there. Today we have a very special review. It's actually going to be a long string of reviews, because the book is just so enormous. I got this shipment from Paizo, from my friend Ed Paizo. No, I have more than one friend at Paizo, who sent me this with the promise that I wouldn't put it up online until August 1st or later, which is, of course, today. And I understand that, and that's fine, although it was not an easy task to hold my intentions at bay. But this is the Pathfinder 2nd edition core rule book, and it goes for $59.99. Because apparently you're paying by the pound. This book is amazing. It's enormous. It's over 600 pages. And let's see, it's got the glossary and index starts at page 628. So this is quite an assortment of rules. It's very thick and it's meaty, and it's not like it's 20-point font. I mean, it's regular font size in here. So it's not like they tried to pawn off a thick book with large fonts and little content. This thing is jam-packed with content. So this is, for me, at least, this is kind of a first look. Even though I did a review of the playtest way back when it last Gen Con was when, so that was a year ago, and I looked over some of the rules. I don't really know how much has changed in said rules since the play test. So we're going to get into it. This has 11 chapters, and I am going to go through. I'm probably going to do one entire show, maybe keep the shows a little bit shorter and do one entire show per chapter, because there's so much to get through. We have, of course, the introduction, ancestries and backgrounds, which is a kind of a cool twist on races. So it doesn't really have races because they are not racist. So it has ancestries and backgrounds, classes, skills, feats, equipment, spells, the Age of Lost Omens, playing the game mastering, and crafting, and treasure. And then it has a conditions appendix on page 618, which is really cool. Conditions are what state your character can find his or herself in. whether it is dazed and confused or dying and dead, you can get it all there. So what I'm going to do is this is kind of a preview show, and I'm going to go through it loosely, and then the next review I will concentrate on each individual chapter. Now, the other book that I have to review is the Bestiary. Bestiary, yes, of course, which is the Pathfinder Bestiary. It goes for $49.99, which it is. It claims to have over 400 of fantasy's fiercest foes that burst from the pages of this enormous compendium of the most popular and commonly encountered creatures in the world of Pathfinder. From familiar enemies like orcs, dragons, and vampires to new horrors like the nightmarish Nihilith and the three-headed Macradi, to suitable servants for summoners of every alignment, this must-have companion to the Pathfinder core rulebook is crawling with creatures to challenge characters of every level, of course. So I will be doing a review of that probably next, before I get back into the other thing, back into the core rulebook, just because I want to do a review of this. So let us begin, shall we? The core rulebook is, of course, it is the bread and butter of the second edition Gamist, and the artwork, I will say right off the bat, is it is splendid. Pathfinder is always, and I like the flute that their exemplary bard has. It is I don't think it's a fipple flute. It's a weird thing because it has an end piece like the penny whistle might have. This is called a fipple, and the fipple means you can blow into it in any direction, in any way, and it'll play. It'll make a toot. Whereas it also has an embouchure, which, if you know anything about, or even if you don't, I'll explain it. An embouchure is the side blowy flute. It's called a transverse flute because it's transverse, and it blows sideways like many a sequel to many a good movie I have seen. So I don't know what kind of flute that is, but that's neither here nor there. And I'm going to try and limit my neither heres nor theres to get to because there's a lot of meat to cover. So the rules in the introduction. The introduction's chapter 1. This introduction is designed to help you understand the basics of Pathfinder. Which, of course makes sense, because while a lot of us in the games, plural, have been around for quite a long time and have played many, many games, there are a lot of folks who I meet practically daily who have never played, which to me is, as long as they're young. When I find an older person that has never played, I'm like, what a waste of precious, precious decades. So there are a lot of newcomers. So this book has to do double duty in that it's running both the veterans and the greenery. This chapter, and we'll kind of judge how that goes if it is done well, because you don't want to blow away the newbies and bore the crap out of the veterans, right? So that's a tough tightrope to walk. So this chapter also includes rules for building and leveling up character, which, yeah, The chapter ends with an example of building a first level character, so that's cool. The second chapter, and each of these chapters, let me take a look here. Each of these chapters, like the introduction, that chapter that I just read you, the introduction of the introduction, introception, as it were, is from page 4 to page 32. So it's not like a half a page blurb that tells you, here's how you roll a character. Take your dice, do good, have fun. The ancestries and backgrounds is on page 32, which that makes it a 28-page chapter. The introduction, that is. And I think all of the chapters, I mean, ancestries and backgrounds on page 32, classes begin on 66, then skills begin on 232, so classes is quite extensive. Feats is 254, so a little bit on the skills, a little bit on the feats. The equipment is 70, so feats is like 24 pages of feats, and so forth. So the chapters they're not skimpy on their info, which pleases me. Nothing is worse than the games that leave you guessing, which I don't like. The other thing that I have come to not like is something that we found in the Starfinder book, which didn't make me horribly happy. Which was it was narrative over science, and that's okay for most things, but a sci-fi game is not. You want to keep the science in as much as you can, and it was a very simple concept of travel time and speed, and so that was disappointing. But that's not this. Playing the game. We got downtime, and it covers a lot of stuff. As you might imagine, which what we want to do is we want to find out how well it covers stuff, because we know it covers stuff. The chapter of classes contains rules for all 12 classes. You heard that right, 12 classes. Skills is a small chapter because they have, excuse me, I'm so sorry. The skills chapter, they have, I believe they have parsed down the skills somewhat. It's Fipple Flute, as it shows on page 94. And a Fipple Flute is, if you remember earlier in this video, a Fipple Flute is something you blow straight into, and it makes a sound no matter what you do. Skills. So, I'm going to take a brief look at skills here. And, yeah, it is as I suspected. You have a limited number of skills. Acrobatics. It's so limited I can read it without fearing the drawing out of said video. Acrobatics, Arcana, Athletics, Crafting, Deception, Diplomacy, Intimidation, Lore, Medicine, Nature, Occultism, Performance, Religion, Society, Stealth, Survival, and Thievery. So there you have it. That is the entire list of skills. So just that alone. Now, if you remember you played 3.5. When you take a look at skills, you've got this enormous list of skills, and they go on seemingly forever, and it's an onus to me. It may not be to you. I know a lot of folks. Tavernier Ian is the first one that comes to mind who treasures skills, because he said skills make the character. That's why he doesn't like first edition D&D, because skills are not present in first edition D&D. So you don't know what your character can do, and it therefore limits their identity somehow. I never saw that all that much. I agree to a point, but I put a lot into role playing. But I do agree that skills are imperative to know what your character can and cannot attempt to do. So this is this list of skills is brief but encompassing. And it has 2 lists of actions for each skill: untrained action and trained action. For example, in athletics, with athletics, untrained, you can climb, you can force open, grapple, high jump, long jump, shove, swim, and trip. With trained actions, you may attempt to disarm, because that is a very athletic thing to do, apparently. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because it has a wide range of skills, things that wide range implies, and then you go from there. And so when you take crafting, you automatically can recall knowledge and repair untrained, and then you can train yourself to craft, earn income, and identify alchemy, which is very cool. And in some cases, you can only use a skill during downtime, such as earn income, downtime income. That's people who have their priorities, right? You know, it's gaming is what you do. Your job is on your downtime between gaming sessions. Yeah, I like that. So jumping back here, we've got skills, feats, equipment, spells, the Age of Lost Omens, playing the game and game mastering, and then crafting and treasure. Which I'm really hoping that the crafting section has some good rules for creating magic devices. The other thing that I'm hoping is that the fighters don't get shafted. Fighter classes. Now you can play in high or low fantasy settings as your tastes. I know a lot of folks who do a lot of. I mean, there's a preference for every person, it seems like. But that notwithstanding, it just depends on what you wish to do. And so there's a good explanation of actions, what you can do, reactions, and it's got a symbol for each. So if something like when we went to skills, in the skills arena, which I will hop back to here for an instance. It has a number of symbols, which is a small diamond in the corner of a larger diamond. That is the single action. That is the action symbol. When there's one, it means that it's a single action. So skills like balance, climb, request. Anyway, can I diet Pepsi, please? That is a single action. Then other actions like administer first aid, long jump, disable a device, pick a lock, for instance. Actually, I think that might be all of them. High jump, long jump, yeah. Administer first aid, disable device, pick a lock, etc. Those are double actions, or a 2-action activity. And then there are 3, that is a 3-action activity. Then there's a little, like an undo symbol, which is a reaction, which means an action has to take place first. And you get 1 reaction encounter per round, and you can only use it when a specific trigger is fulfilled. For instance, you cannot parry and I don't know if parry's in here or not, but this is common sense to me. You can't parry until they swing. Otherwise, you would look rather silly. Although it might be intimidating. So, and then free actions is the action symbol that's not filled in, and so forth. So it is rather straightforward and very basic. Not basic in a bad way. It is basic in that I'm seeing it as, I'm interpreting it as, because whenever I look at a book, I have to wonder what the author was thinking when they put this together, because you have to determine that. Well, you don't have to, but it is helpful to determine that when you're trying to assess the intention of an author. It's like, what were they thinking when they wrote this book? Why did they do this? Do they think we're stupid? Or are they not thinking of what the reader wants to know? Or, I mean, there's a million different reasons. It's almost like there's a reason for every single author. So, with that being said, it still has the strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, and it has the same ability modifiers. 18, 19 is +4, whereas 12, 13 is +1, and so forth. So there's that. Then they give you step by step on how to roll up your character. Now, there is contention amongst those who have their own skill assignment and rolling method. Some say just a flat 3 6-sided dice, and that's your skill in order. Roll 3 for strength, and then you make your character based on that set of rules, which is fine. And again, I've been a proponent of this since the beginning of time, that it doesn't matter how you do it as long as you do it the way you want to do it. And I'm not talking about I roll 36-sided dice and anything under a 6 is re-rolled. This is for your gaming group, right? So if your gaming group, like my gaming group, we roll 4 dice or 5 dice and take the highest. 4 dice take the highest, and 3 dice take the highest, which yields, as you might imagine, some pretty high rolls, because the characters are supposed to be exceptional. And if you're a good dungeon master or game master, I'm dungeon master to me, just because of my experiential background. But if you are a good game master, you can handle any character regardless of their power level and or abilities, unless you specifically want them to be like Tavernier Lyric ran a campaign of characters that each one of them had a major handicap, like missing a leg, paraplegic, one was blind, one was deaf, and so forth, just to see how the players can handle it. Which brings me to my next point is, if you're a good player, then even if you had all 18s like I had in one of my campaigns, they weren't all 18s, but they were mostly 18s, and they were genetically engineered people who escaped from they woke up in a laboratory with no knowledge of who they were or what they could do, and they had to discover what they could do in their escaping of this facility that had become dilapidated, and they only knew each other by the number designation tattoos on their wrists. So and they had almost all 18s. It was all +4s. And somebody said that, yeah, I mean, they really chastised me for allowing this on one of my reviews, one of my videos. That said that that's I wouldn't play a game with a dungeon master like that because none of the characters would have personality, and it's just too much, and it's bogus, and you're crap. Wow. So I assumed that he had a score of about a 9, like a 7 in intelligence or imagination, because it's simply untrue. You can play any kind of a campaign with any kind of a abled character. So that's good. But again, it depends on what you want. If that's what he wants, don't come to my table. But if you want to, rape your players, I mean, not literally, but if you want to rape their ability scores and then make them just average people, that's also fun. It depends on what you want. Now, here on page 23 in the intro, we have hi Xena. We have a list of ability boosts and for ancestries, classes, and that light is getting on my nerves because it's putting a glare on my book. The pages are kind of glossy, which it's good quality, but it's also kind of irritating. My cat, little Xena, she loves to know what I'm doing at all times. It lists the ancestries. The ancestries are another word for the major races, such as dwarf, elf, gnome, goblin, witch, halfling, and humans. Okay, I shook my head at goblin because I absolutely despise the Scrappy-Doo. The Scrappy-Doo syndrome. I know it's their mascot, and that's fine. If you like their goblins, that's whatever. That's okay. But I personally, I detest the frickin' goblin. So, and even in the description, it says goblins are short, scrappy-doo, energetic people who have spent millennia maligned and feared. Which, yeah, it has come to the point where I almost do not have goblins in my campaigns because I despise the goblins so much. And then one wonderful thing that I have to say that I've been complaining about since the beginning of version 3, not even 3.5, was the elfization of halflings. Hobbit says they're little people. They have little hairy feet, little hairy toes, and actually their toes are not small. Their toes are quite large. They got big feet. They look like children. They still have. It looks like they still got baby fat because they eat 57 times a day, and they're amazing. They're an amazing race. Anyone who's familiar with Lord of the Rings, and that's everyone who has ever read a book should be familiar with Lord of the Rings. Even though I had a doctor of Shakespeare in college who had never read Tolkien, and I was like, "You're a monster." However, they actually got it right. They don't make their halflings look like miniature dwarves, miniature elves, miniature dwarves. That'd be a trick. They don't. Their hobbits look like. Hey, sweetie. Their halflings look like halflings. They're little short, stubby people with big hairy feet, and I love them. It's one of the most amazing things ever that they've actually redeemed. Hobbit says the halflings, which if you do know anything about your Tolkien. Hail to the Halflings was a human song that was sang upon Aragorn's coronation. So halfling and hobbits are, you know. And of course the elves are cool. They did gnomes right, which I also love and adore. The gnomes are, because early on gnomes were just like wimpy dwarves, and then gnomes became the tinkerers, the technical dwarves. And they never really had. Oh, and in edition 4 of D&D, they actually removed gnomes as a player character race and made them monsters, which was a freaking cop out. If I just can't even say. So the gnomes were done right. The dwarves, of course, they've got the dwarves. They respect the dwarves, which you better respect the dwarves. They got elves right. I think they did all of the races right except for the goblin, which you can use or not. It's up to you. You're the gamer. I don't like the goblins, so I don't use them except as goblins. And if it's a player character, and if a player wants to come to my table playing a goblin, that's fine. I'm not going to disallow it, because I usually allow everything, because I always take it like a challenge. It's like a challenge of a word puzzle. If you can handle it, if you can't handle it, then you're not worthy of your gavel. Where's my gavel? If you want to be a dungeon master, you gotta have the gavel. So, with that being said, I move on. Now, their classes. We will go over them. I will go over them. You will listen. I will talk. They have the alchemist, which is someone who throws alchemical bombs and drinks concoctions of their own making, which stands for a reason. Although transmuting base metals into gold, I think, was the primary desire of most of the alchemists, although I'm sure there were a lot of different reasons for alchemists to alchemize, to alchem. The barbarian, of course, which is pretty self-explanatory. The bard with his wondrous transverse fipple flute, who appears to be a gnome. The champion, which is another word for paladin in this book, I have seen. Which the champion, whereas you have the paladin, and I'm seeing their logic here. The paladin is very specifically a lawful good person, unless you're a paladin of freedom, which you're chaotic good, and that's from the Unearthed Arcana 3.5. Paladin of good, paladin of slaughter, and a paladin of tyranny. Slaughter is chaotic evil, and tyranny is lawful evil. And it's just a real shame that you can't have a paladin of neutrality, which I'm sure there is, although I haven't seen it. So you've got the cleric, which of course is a cleric. The druid, self-explanatory. The fighter, which I have no idea what he does. The monk, which of course is the monastic aesthetic. I guess it'd be an aesthetic, but a martial monk. The ranger, which the ranger example in the book is a dwarf, which I personally dig, as you can imagine why. The rogue, the sorcerer, and the wizard. Is that 12? That is 12 classes. Yes, indeed. So the ones that are, I don't think any of them are new. They're not new. No, the alchemist is a thing, which is cool. That's fine. I dig them all. I think they're all very cool. They all have a place, and they could all come to my table, I must say. Then the step-by-step for how to build a character is included in the introduction. So step 1 was create a concept. Now, this is an important thing, because when you create a concept, you're doing more than just picking a class and picking a race. Creating a concept is something that you do first to give you guidelines as to what your character will be. And then all the rest of the stuff is just a decision that can go into it or not. For example, I want to create a swashbuckling, nimble sea captain who uses a rapier and a main gauche, I don't know if that's pronounced right, it's French. The left-handed dagger, he dual wields the blades, and he's very, very handsome, very dapper, very dashing, as it were. So therefore, I don't want to make it a half orc, or maybe that's exactly why I want to make it a half orc. So that's the thing. I mean, it's like the concept is there, and then it's up to you to do it. Now, if you wanted to make it really dramatic and good, you could give him a high dex and a high constitution and an okay strength, so that he relies on his wits and his abilities. Or if you wanted to play a more comedic campaign or a character, then you would have him, with an average dex or even a low dexterity and high wisdom or whatever. So creating the concept is paramount, and it's tantamount to the first parts of making your character, which I think is very cool. I like that part of the book. Then step 2, you start your ability scores, which, that's where you roll the dice and all that stuff. Then step 3, you select an ancestry. So you very specifically do the ancestry after you rolled the dice, which I think is cool. It's a cool thing, and nothing I dislike about this yet. And all of the ancestries are the major races, and I think it's fine. I think they're probably trying to stay away from the word race because it's such a hot topic, such a trigger topic now, which I never understood. I mean, I understand why, but I don't understand I've never considered race. I mean, I've played racist characters, NPCs who, you can't let that half orc in here, he'll crap on the tables. And the half orc character is like, I beg your pardon. This is fantastic. So to me, none of that stuff matters. It's the character. If you want to play the character, it's the same as people. You're either a jerk or you're not. Doesn't matter what you are or what you prefer. And I've said this a million times at least. You're either a dick or you're not, and that goes for everybody. So that's how I judge people. If you're a jerk, you can be. I've known a lot of people. I've taught a lot of students in colleges and various things like that, and I know for a fact that there are good people everywhere, and there's bad people everywhere, and that's a choice. That's a rant. That's a total soapbox moment. So you select an ancestry, and every ancestry has an ability boost, which I will go over briefly here. Dwarves have a constitution boost, a wisdom boost, and a free boost. All of them have free boosts. Elves are dexterity and intelligence. Gnomes are constitution and charisma. Dexterity and charisma for goblins, dexterity and wisdom for halflings, and humans get 2 free boosts. So, and that's fine, because humans are, I mean, if you've ever seen a human, if you've ever been to Walmart, you know that that human beings are some of the most diverse species in ever. I mean, if cheetahs, for example, are almost genetically identical. They're like, it's like a species of clones. Whereas human beings, holy crap, there are people, and I know you've seen it, where you get the example of the little tiny dude standing next to this big enormous dude or chick, and holy moly. So that's why they give 2 free boosts to humans, because they are so genetically diverse. Which I highly recommend taking the DNA test. It tells you who you are. Well, no, not really. It tells you where you came from, not who you are. I came from Ireland. What I found out. I thought it was something else. But anyway, step 4, pick a background. So you can have like a plaid background, or in my case, I have books. No, that's not what it is. Your character's background might represent their upbringing, an aptitude they've been honing since their youth, or another aspect of their life before they became an adventurer. Character backgrounds appear in Chapter 2, starting on page 60. So we'll take a look at that in a future episode. And backgrounds typically provide 2 ability boosts, one that can be applied to either of 2 specific ability scores and one that is free. Training in a specific skill, training in a lore skill, and a specific skill feat. So your background, whilst can be annoying for, I know a lot of DMs that don't like backgrounds, don't like lengthy backgrounds. I've even seen a few memes dedicated to disparaging those who like making backgrounds. Some people like it, some people don't. In this particular instance, it's important, so I will give them good marks for that. Step 5, choose a class. For instance, English 101, or not. At this point, you need to decide your character's class. Your character gives your character access to a suite of heroic abilities, determines how effectively they fight, and governs how easily they can shake off and avoid certain harmful effects. Each class is fully detailed in Chapter 3, which we will get to. You put it on your character sheet. So that is that. Of course, those of us who have played before are all familiar with at least somewhat of the character generation process, unless it's Traveler, which Traveler, the character generation process is entirely different, and if you play Traveler, you know this. Step 6, you determine your ability scores, and this finalizes your ability scores. So after you've chosen your heritage, your ancestry, then you've given yourself your background, which also affects your ability scores. Then your class, which may also affect your ability scores. Then you've accumulated all of your ability boosts, and that is what determines your final ability scores. So, in other words, just because you have a dwarf and you've only rolled like a constitution of 12, for instance, which, that would be a way sickly dwarf. You can give him a con boost for the dwarf, and then you could give him a con boost from the free. Then you could do the background to do 2 more con boosts if you so choose, Ed. And then very possibly get another ability boost from the skills, not the skills, but the class boosts. So in that, you could have 2, which would make it a 14, then another one that could make it a 15, possibly 16, and then you could take it all the way up to 18 if you wanted to, potentially, if you chose the right background things and other things that gave you ability boosts. So despair not, weekly little dwarf. Weekly, not bi-weekly. Well, it could be bi. It doesn't matter. Again, I say, it doesn't matter. Step 7, record class details. Now, they've done all the stuff. Put it on your character sheet. All of the benefits and features that your character has gained from this, you put it on your sheet. And go from there. Then step 8, you buy your equipment because you've been okay. Apparently, there is no more rolling for gold. At first level, your character has 15 gold pieces to spend on anything they want. Now, 15 gold may not seem like a huge deal, but there you can have a hireling that works for a silver piece a month. So there you go. And in the equipment chapter, just to take a brief foray into things are cheap. So 15 gold pieces is quite a bit. You can buy a chainmail shirt for 5 gold. You can buy a suit of explorer's clothing for 1 silver. So you can outfit yourself for quite a bit. Now that leads me to believe that with the entire gold piece system basically turned upside down. Because if you remember correctly, a silver piece, a gold piece, in the doodly-doo, I'm sure I have a player's handbook here somewhere. Move my peace pipe. This is definitely not the bookshelf to go to with bare feet. So we shall look into the first, the third 3.5 equipment price list here, just as an example. And what did I say? I said a chainmail thing was 5 gold. And in here, if you want to buy chain, it's 100 gold. So basically the prices are about, and yes, I know I'm just reshelving that anywhere. Don't give me a hard time. I'll reshelve it later in its proper place. So it's like prices are a 20th of what they were in 3.5. And I'm not going to do the first edition Pathfinder book. But I just wanted to have a baseline. So you calculate your modifiers. Then, which is your skills. Your modifiers are based on one of your abilities. If you gamed, you know this. If not, when you have for instance, they have an example here. Perception is it determines how alert they are, I guess, to external stimuli. For example, do you hear something or do you see something? Well, roll a perception. In the old, it was both, and the Pathfinder, it's perception. So your perception is equivalent to your proficiency bonus in perception plus your wisdom modifier. So if you have a wisdom of 18, your modifier is plus 4. You would add 4 to your perception and roll to see. And if you get over that, minus whatever penalties, however difficult it is, set forth by the game master, then if you beat that roll, then you have successfully heard, saw, seen, I don't know, smelled or felt or tasted said external stimulus. And saving throws are much the same way. Melee strikes and ranged strikes are much the same way, and skills. So all those get bonuses based on, or penalties based on your abilities. And then we will, because I know they're doing it in a different way about skills and such, and we will get into that when I do the skills book chapter. So step 10 is finishing the details. Now, you have the 9 alignments, which is an important thing, I guess. I've played entire games when alignment wasn't an issue. A lot of people do. A lot of people treasure alignment. They go very, and it also depends on your class. If you have something that is divine oriented, such as the champion or the cleric, then you must pay close attention. You must heed your alignment constraints very, very carefully, because I know a person just recently who lost their paladinhood because they weren't thinking. They had shifted into the paladin class, partly because of peer pressure. Other people were saying, you should become a paladin, and finally she said okay, and then she did, and went, we should get out of here. Instantly lost their paladin status, became a rogue. So there is that. And that wasn't even an alignment change, that was just a behavior point. So there's that. You should, you can, you don't have to. These are all just finishing details that you don't need, although they're highly recommended. Your deity, what character your deity worships, your age, your I'm not a big fan of the social justice warrior stuff. Even though I practice it daily, I'm not a proselytizer thereof. I just think that people are people, and that's, no, it doesn't trigger me or any. I don't know. Color me wacky. But you pick your gender and pronouns, if applicable. Which, sure, whatever. I don't care. I honestly don't care. It just, all of it in my face is a bit irritating. I just wish people could just be people and leave other people alone. Anyway. Class DC, it sets the difficulty for certain abilities granted by your character's class. It equals 10 plus your proficiency bonus for your class, and we'll get into that later. It's a bit of a different system. I think I might like it. Your proficiency bonus for the class DC, and it's +3 for most first level characters, plus the modifier for the class's key ability score. Now, if we go back here a few pages, the key ability score of each class is Alchemist is Intelligence. Secondary ability scores are Constitution and Dex. Of course, if you can't hold onto that test tube, if you're not dexterous enough, then you may be relying on your Constitution. Of course, the Barbarian is Strength with Dexterity and Constitution as secondary, and so forth. Bard's Charisma, and so forth. So each one has a key ability, which is cool. Now, way back in first edition D&D, if you had high scores in your class's key ability, then you could get 10% bonus on your experience points gained, which was always very cool. but they don't do that anymore. It's done differently, of course. Armor class. Now, armor class is a requirement because if something wants to hit you, you can't say, I don't have an armor class. Because then I'd be like, oh, so it's automatic hit. Oh, wait, I can figure that out. Oh, good. Your character's bulk is how much weight they can comfortably carry. So that's like their weight, and that is also an important thing. So you go through steps 1 through 10 easy steps, and 10 easy steps and your character's done. And everything is very straightforward. I like the way it's written. It's written in such a way that if you need the example, then you can read it. If you don't need the example, then you don't have to read it. You can skip over it easily and know where to begin, where to pick up reading again. So there is that. So that is one of the things I was talking about earlier about it making it suitable for veterans and noobs alike. The sample character is on page 30, and it has a paragraph or 2 or 3 about the exampling, sure, of someone rolling up Pathfinder characters. And for example, steps 1 and 2, Adam is making his first Pathfinder character. After talking about it with the rest of the group, he's decided to make a Dwarven Druid. Good choice. After jotting down a few ideas, he begins writing down a 10 for each ability score. Okay. Then he looks up the dwarf entry in chapter 2, records the ability boost to his constitution and wisdom, bringing them both up to 12, as I mentioned earlier. He also applies the ability flaw to his charisma, dropping it to 8. For this free ability boost, he chooses for his, wow, English is an important thing to be able to read. For his free ability boost, he chooses dexterity to boost his defenses, raising it to 12 as well, and so forth. And then it goes all the way through to step 10. Finally, Adam fills out the final details of his character, noting his neutral alignment and calculating his AC and bulk limits. Last but not least, he fills in some last-minute information about his character and decides on a name. Gar, the dwarf, is ready for his first adventure. So, and that is a step-by-step example of exactly what the guy had to do. And in doing so, it explains how it's done. So, that will conclude, well, actually, let me talk about leveling up. World of Pathfinder is a dangerous place, especially when certain people are dungeon mastering. And your character will face terrifying beasts, deadly traps on their journey into legend. With each challenge resolved, a character earns XP that will allow them to increase in level, of course. And there's some contingencies. There's some contention, about levels. Not about this game, but just in general. Some people don't like levels. Each level grants the greater skill, increased resiliency, and new capabilities. Each time your character reaches 1,000 points, their level increases by 1. On your character sheet, indicate your character's new level beside the name of their class and deduct 1,000 XP from their XP total. If you have any experience points left after this, record them. They count toward your next level. So your character is on their way to advancing yet again. All right. So it's just a straight 1,000 XP per level. That's what it looks like to me. I'm not sure if that's good or not. It just depends on how they award experience points. We'll get into that later. It's a cliffhanger, I suppose. Although I can look it up. Actually, I will look it up after I'm done with this. But skills and leveling up. What it should say where it is. Okay, so yeah, it's 1,000 per level. Okay. Well, that's fine and dandy. So you won't have to calculate how many XP your character has to have, or if you're GMing, you won't have to calculate their level by how many, because we give a session bonus and a role-playing bonus upon every game, which can sometimes be a penalty just depending on whether you are good or bad at role-playing. Metagaming is a serious penalty in my campaigns. I think the Dungeon Master wants us to turn left. That is a big minus on your XP total at the end. They have a different way of doing ability boosts and so forth and so on. So that is the beginning, kind of a preview of what this is going to be. Again, it is the Pathfinder Core Rules 2nd Edition. It goes for $59.99. I don't know why I have to keep looking at that, because it's still the same price. It's like looking in the fridge for new snacks. So yeah, this is going to be a good. I think it's going to be a good system. We're going to roll up characters later, and we might live stream that. I don't know. I would like to, just if I can get everybody to do it. And it says they're easier to learn and faster to play, and they offer deeper customization. So far what I've seen has looked good. It is not going to be like some of the other games. Actually, a few of the other reviews I've done where I look at the first couple of pages and go, this is crap, I'm never touching it again. And I haven't. I know it's not fair. I've been criticized especially by those who like the game that I dished on, that I should give it a chance. But it's like, I don't have to. I don't want to. I don't like the game. I don't like what I saw. I'm not going to. You may, please, by all means, continue playing. I am not saying you shouldn't play it. I'm not putting you down for playing it or not. I don't care. It's your game. You do what makes you happy, man. That's what it's all about. And so far, this has made me happy. So I'm not going to give it. I'm not going to give it an axe count just yet. Just because I'm not finished with the review, although it's looking really good. It's probably going to get 5. I'm going to, spoiler alert, it's probably going to get 5 axes, just because I love the Pathfinder game and I like what they put out. And so far what I've looked at has not disappointed. So, yeah, okay, cool. So, on that happy note, I will say I'm probably going to be posting a couple of videos a day, since this is what I'm doing almost exclusively now, aside from making custom canes, which is an odd thing, but I've discovered that I love doing that. So if you want any information about that, message me or whatever. But this is the Pathfinder core rule book, and it is the 2nd edition. It looks very promising. It looks 5X promising. Again, if you go to Gen Con at any point in time in the near future, which is going to be going on for the next few days, this is August 1st and it just opened today, go pick yourself up a copy from Paizo. I can already recommend it. I haven't read through the whole book yet. but I can already recommend it. I think it's going to be cool. And if you like Pathfinder, you're probably going to like this. And I have to see if there's a conversion for older characters, because there's some books do that and some don't. It just depends. And so forth and so on. So, on behalf of the whole cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern, I am your host, Dr. Jeff Goins, saying this is just the first of many reviews on this enormously thick book. You can see it's freaking thick. 600-page book. So this is part one. This is the introduction, and more to come. So I can say for a fact, at first I feared it, then I charged. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.